Hey, Force Hill Falcons, Mr. F here. It's a beautiful Sunday afternoon, and I'm looking at continuing on with holes. We're gonna get this done. All right, jumping right into it. Chapter 40. When Stanley found the onion that night before, he didn't question how it came to be there. He ate it gratefully. But now, as he sat gazing up at the big thumb and the meadow full of flowers, he couldn't help but wonder about it. If there was one wild onion, there could be more. He intertwined his fingers and tried to rub out the pain. Then he bent down and dug up another flower, this time pulling up the entire plant, including the root. "Onions! Fresh, hot, sweet onions!" Sam called as Mary Lou pulled the cart down Main Street. 8 cents a dozen! It was a beautiful spring morning, and the sky was painted pale blue and pink, the same color as the lake and the peach trees along its shore. Mrs. Gladys Tennyson was wearing just her nightgown and robe as she came running down the street after Sam. Mrs. Tennyson was normally a very proper woman who never went out in public without dressing up in fine clothes and a hat. So it was quite surprising to the people of Green Lake to see her running past them. "Sam!" she shouted. "Whoa, Mary Lou," said Sam, stopping his mule and cart. "Good morning, Miss Tennyson," he said. "How's little Becca doing?" Gladys Tennyson was all smiles. "I think she's going to be all right. The fever broke about an hour ago, thanks to you." "I'm sure the good Lord and Doc Hawthorne deserve most of the credit." "The good Lord, yes," agreed Miss Tennyson, "but not Doc Hawthorne. That quack wanted to put leeches on her stomach. Leeches, I tell you. My word. He said they would suck out all the bad blood. Now you tell me this. How would a leech know good blood from bad blood? That guy's crazy." "I wouldn't know," said Sam. "It was your onion tonic," said Miss Tennyson. "That's what saved her." Other townspeople made their way to the cart. "Good morning, Gladys," said Hattie Parker. "Don't you look lovely this morning?" And several people snickered. "Good morning, Hattie," Miss Tennyson replied. "Does your husband know you're parading about in your bedclothes?" Hattie asked. There were more snickers. "My husband knows exactly where I am and how I am dressed, thank you," said Miss Tennyson. "We have both been up all night and half the morning with Rebecca. She almost died from stomach sickness. It seems she ate some bad meat." Hattie's face flushed. Her husband, Jim Parker, was a town butcher. "It made my husband and me sick as well," said Miss Tennyson, "but it nearly killed Rebecca. With what her being so young. But Sam here, he saved your life." "It wasn't me," said Sam. "It was the onions." "I'm glad Becca's all right," Hattie said contritely. "I keep telling Jim he needs to wash his knives," said Mr. Pike, who owned the general store. And Hattie Parker excused herself, then turned and quickly walked away. "Tell Becca that when she feels up to it, come by the store for a piece of candy," said Mr. Pike. "Thank you. I'll do that." Before returning home, Miss Tennyson bought a dozen onions from Sam. She gave him a dime and told him to keep the change. "I don't take charity, ma'am," Sam told her, "but if you want to buy a few extra onions from Mary Lou, I'm sure she'd appreciate it." "All right, then," said Miss Tennyson. "Give me my change in onions." Sam gave Miss Tennyson an additional 3 onions, and she fed them one at a time to Mary Lou. She laughed as the old donkey ate them out of her hand. Stanley and Zero slept off and on for the next 2 days. They ate onions all they wanted and splashed dirty water into their mouths. And in the late afternoon, Big Thumb gave them shade. Stanley tried to make the hole deeper, but he really needed a shovel. His efforts just seemed to stir up the mud and make the water even dirtier. Zero was sleeping. He was still very sick and weak, but the sleep and onions seemed to be doing him some good. Stanley was no longer afraid that he would soon die. Still, he didn't want to go for the shovel while Zero was asleep. He didn't want him to wake up and think he'd been deserted. He waited for Zero to open his eyes. "I think I'll go look for the shovel," Stanley said. "I'll wait here," Zero said feebly, as if he had any other choice. Stanley headed down the mountain, and the sleep and the onions had done him a lot of good as well. He felt strong. It was fairly easy to follow the trail he had made 2 days earlier. There was a few places where he wasn't sure he was going the right way, but it took just a little bit longer to search before he found the trail again. He went quite a ways down the mountain, but still didn't find the shovel. He looked back up toward the top of the mountain. He must have walked right past it, he thought. There's no way he could have carried Zero all the way up from here. Still, he headed downward just in case. He came to a bare spot between two large patches of weeds, and he sat down to rest. Now he had definitely gone too far, he decided. He was tired from walking down the hill. It would have been impossible to have carried Zero up the hill from here, especially after walking all day with no food or water. The shovel must be buried somewhere in the weeds. Before starting back up, he took one last look around in all the directions. He saw a large indentation in the weeds, a little further down the mountain. It didn't seem likely that the shovel could be there, but he'd already come this far. There, lying in some tall weeds, he found the shovel and the sack of jars. He was amazed. He wondered if the shovel and sack might have rolled down the hill further, but none of the jars were broken except the ones which they had broken earlier. And if they had rolled down the hill, it's doubtful that he'd be able to find the sack and shovel side by side. On his way back up the mountain, Stanley had to sit down and rest several times. It was a long, hard climb. All right, we're going to put up a little pin in that right now. I'm going to come back to you. I'm going to get this one downloaded and read the next one. I don't have as much space on my iPod, on my iPhone thing here as I want. But anyways, I'll be right back. Okay? Don't you go anywhere.